Hi again, guys. So this is, guys and girls, this is my trip to Valparaiso, or Valparaiso. It's a touristy type town set on the water, but on cliff tops with beautiful coloured houses and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very touristy town. It's also pretty much a party town as well. Uh, on the way there, you pass through lots of vineyards. The road there is pretty boring. It's about an hour and a half from Santiago, and this is coming into the town. It's not much. I mean, it's pretty much a port city that's become a fairly big tourist location. A lot of Japanese tourists, international travellers, and stuff like that. And it's also, as you can see, it's a port city for tourists as well. I only stayed there. I just had a day trip there. Chris, who I'd spoken about in previous videos, he caught up with me in Santiago. Basically, by the third day I was there, I put my bike in for a service. Fourth day I was there, I put my bike in for a service, and this is the day I got it back. So I thought I'd go for a bit of a ride and actually have a look around and see. And just see how the bike's feeling, new tyres on it, all that. Everything was working fine at this stage and going well. I felt comfortable on the bike. The fresh tyres, you got probably a couple of hours of riding in them. You'll ride them in if you give them a good run. And I just stopped off here and then sort of try to find some. I wanted to get up to the cliff tops, so I ended up driving up a little bit and then going back around. And just stopped off and looked at some things. While I was here, I went to a cafe and then I met a couple of locals, and they gave me a map, a street map, I gave them a few dollars and they went and got a map, and they showed me a route that I could go on that actually took me basically off-road on the way back. It was a lot. They said if it's wet you can't ride it, because, and once you see the footage of it, you can see why, because it's very powdered. A lot of bits of sand and stuff like that, which is pretty tough for me. I'm not the greatest on sand, and I really need to do an adventure, an advanced venture course to learn how to ride properly in sand. It wasn't that thick. It was probably 4 to 6 inches at times, but I find that really tricky. I'm just not confident in it, and that's the thing about it. It's not about, it's not so much about. I mean, I take it pretty slowly through the stuff that I'm not confident in. But the thing about it is when you're riding on your own, it's probably a lot less pressure. So, for instance, Chris is a better off-roader than what I am, and so he would probably scoot ahead off-road, with me. And so then that puts a little bit of fake pressure on you. You should never worry about that. If he's going to go ahead, he's going to go ahead, or if your riding partners are better than you, he's going to go ahead because he's going to have fun going at a certain speed. But I just prefer to sit back and just play within my limits, especially when you're riding alone. You can't afford to take risks, because if you come off your bike and get injured or anything, you might be hours, even days in some cases, away from getting help. So, but anyway, they told me that if it's fine and if the weather good, all will be fine. But if the weather turns bad, and parts of the stuff on the way back were basically single track, and really fine powdered sand and dirt, and I can imagine how bad it would be when it was wet. But it was great fun. But the thing is, I didn't know when it was going to end. Like the sat nav, the Garmin is just useless. Even though I bought the South America pack, it's pretty much useless. I've just sped it up a little bit here. But this is up high on the cliff tops. There's a lot of little arty areas and stuff like that. They're pretty cool. I'm not supposed to be here, I don't think. But I think that's just for but a lot of these cities have cobblestones, and then that's a problem. Cobblestones, when those really shiny cobblestones, especially my bike would just slip and slide. You know, I had to be pretty careful. You know, I'm pretty sure any bike would. This sort of stuff, but more sort of the rounded sort of stuff, you get a lot of that. I took some little photos and some of the art areas. You know, looks pretty cool and stuff like that. So yeah, it really was a really cool spot. So after I'd had lunch, I basically had decided I was going to go take an alternative route back, which, you know, an hour and a half it normally would take, and it took me an extra 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get back because of that. But it didn't worry me. Like, the only thing that was worrying me at the time is my sat nav wasn't working. Thank you, bus. You get that a lot. The buses just come on your side. You just got to get out of the way. Yeah, I was just a bit worried at one stage because I was looking at the time, and you know, because I didn't leave until late. You know, so this is now early afternoon before I even get on it. So I ended up getting back at about 5 to 6 p.m. So yeah, this city, Chris ended up, he's getting his bike service at the moment, but he wouldn't have come anyway because he was going to come here next on his trip, and he spent 2 or 3 nights here, and I think he partied fairly hard. It's a bit of a party town, and I think he had a great time here, but I wasn't really that interested in hanging around here anyway. So I headed back to San Diego and spent, I think, one more night after this, or two more nights after this in San Diego, and then we both left the same day going. He went to Valparaiso, and I went south. Yeah, so I ended up a fair way in front of him. He took a little bit more time than me, and then I went off route here. This is the first part of the off route. So I'm actually heading back down, back down the mountain here. Bloody dogs everywhere too. You'll notice that when you get to South America or Central America, just the amount of stray and wild dogs around is incredible. You know, they just walk around the streets, and I got bitten. I got bitten pretty badly once, and I made sure I treated it pretty well. In uni, I got bitten. Like, these rabid dogs were just absolutely insane, and I had to it was on my way back to the hotel when I'm off-roading on the way back I didn't have a chance not to. I could never avoid them. So I just basically, I've spoken about it in previous videos. Most of the time what you do is, if you've got a clear road, you just accelerate and get the hell out of there. But if you're on dirt, or you've got to stop somewhere, or, you know, there's lights or whatever ahead, or it's a bit tricky, you're basically the best form of defence is to actually just stop. Thank you. You just go on that side of the road. That's all right. So the best way to, and every time the dogs just stopped with me. They just stop barking as soon as you stop. You know, it's like, yeah, what are you doing? This is not the deal. The deal is that you ride and we try and bite your leg. So if you've got the space and the road in front of you to kick them off. But if you don't, my suggestion is to simply stop dead, and then they'll just stop. And then when you've got a bit of clear road in front of you, just accelerate away, and they won't catch you. You know, that's the tactic I used after being attacked quite a few times. Probably on the whole trip, I probably got attacked 10 to 15 times by dogs. And on this trip, actually, in the middle of nowhere, off-roading, they scared the shit out of me. They just came out of nowhere, about 4 or 5 of them. And I'm talking about not a house within, you know, 20, 30 miles, and just on dirt roads, and they just a bunch of them were sitting in a corner, and they just, as I came around the corner, they all just leapt up and had a crack at me. What's going on this road here? So yeah, you have to get used to that. It's pretty crazy. But this is a really nice place, and you know, a lot of the right up the top overlooked the ocean. That was a pretty poor area I just came from. But yeah, it overlooked the ocean and it was some pretty amazing views. There's some of the houses are really nice and some of them are fairly run down. It's sort of like a mixed in between, a mix of some people with money and people without money. I'm sure the people with money don't like the people without money having crappy yards and crap everywhere. But yeah, so I basically hung around town, had some lunch, met some guys. They showed me a route off-road. They showed me where to turn off, and I basically just followed their advice and went for it. So now I'm coming up to a bit of the off-roading stuff. I'll cut away from here. A little bit boring. Yeah, a lot of traffic in the cities. So yeah, so this is the start of the off-roading. It was, you weren't climbing up huge mountains because it was just out after sea level, but maybe 1,000 metres tops. But it was pretty hard packed. This is all right, this sort of stuff. Just on the corners, you've always got to be careful because you get all the loose stuff, and especially after it's been wet, you get these tracks through there as well from the trucks. I maybe saw 4 or 5 cars the whole rest of the trip here. So it's pretty cool. You can see where you've come from and all that sort of stuff. And there's a couple of areas where some pretty cool views that I stopped off and took a few pics. But this stuff I like. It's when they when they throw all the crushed rock on the ground on the road that it gets pretty dicey because it gets fairly thick, and then you get that powdered stuff. So a lot of the corners had all this powdered stuff, and it was a little bit tricky. Can't really tell from there, but a little bit tricky with it because it gets really thick, and you just don't know how thick it's going to be. And I remember one time going further south, I was just riding on a road like this, and all of a sudden it just turned to thick sand, basically buried my bike. No warning sign either. I never thought it was going to happen. It's taking time. Yeah, so I hardly saw any cars, and it was pretty hot. Sea level in summer in all these countries is pretty extremely hot, and you sweat quite a bit. Fairly big, heavy bike. It makes it even more fun. Trying to get round at some of them, and especially this is where I decided there's quite a bit of sand, little bits of sand and really loose stuff. So it got a little bit too. You had to be a little bit careful. There's a car. Yeah, so basically, after today, the bike everything seemed to be fine. The clutch that I'd had problems with was, I had full extension with it, and it felt good. The new tyres felt really good. They still probably hadn't been worn in by now at the moment, but I'd probably done about an hour and a half, 2 hours of riding up until here. It was. It wasn't until later on that I found out that I had some issues, like the clutch went back to basically I had a full play on my clutch, and I couldn't basically, when you pressed in the clutch, it was only the last half inch that actually engaged, and it became a real problem. And I tried to flush it again. I had clutch fluid with me. Tried everything, tried adjusting it and all that sort of stuff, but nothing was working. Parts of California and stuff like that, but yeah, it was pretty. You can see all the all the bends you got to go around and stuff like that, and a lot of them had really loose sand and or really fine. And then I thought, oh, this is cool. I've got like a really good stretch of off-road here, you know, of bitumen. And this lasted for probably about maybe 10-15 miles. And it was really good ride, really good fun riding, because there's no cars around. I only saw a few cars the whole way on this. So it's good fun. So I was going to be pretty happy to have this sort of road for the next, you know. I thought, oh, that was the end of the off-roading. Oh, that's all right, you know, had some fun. But then it didn't quite work out that way. This road ended up just stopping, and you know, there was quite a few little towns here, little tiny villages and stuff. And then on the map it showed like a watering hole that wasn't too far up, and I thought I'd give them a check that out. But there were some kids playing in it and stuff like that, and I just didn't really want to. It was like a little holiday park. And along the way here, once I got onto the dirt track, I stopped in at a couple of places, but they, you know, they call them eco lodges. And I'm sure whoever visits them or stays there are pretty disappointed. Basically, it's like we don't have any power, we don't have any internet, and we just put up a couple of little huts there along the river, and the river was mostly dry. So you'd be pretty disappointed if you got there. There's horse riding and stuff like that. There's supposed to be rafting, but the water level was pretty low everywhere. So I don't think, I don't think anyone who visited those places would have been too happy. They looked pretty crappy, but they had really nice signs pointing to them and all that sort of stuff. But they looked really bad. So I was pretty happy, and I knew from my Reva map, which I use. If you go to any of my blog posts, you'll see all the maps for all the trips that I've done, and the Reva map was showing that there was some more off road to come, and so same with the Google Maps. But you know, I thought, well, maybe this has just been freshly laid, because it was a really nice road, very thin road. You know, not much room for a truck and a car on it, but yeah, they're fun to ride, especially when there's no traffic. I should actually quantify that to say that they're actually good off-road, except in wet. Like if this was wet, you know, they would slip around a fair bit. It's always looking for grip. And the KTM bike, when you get it in off-road mode, it's not so. It's always looking for that grip, the traction. You know, I've never switched it fully off, like the traction control. I just set it to off-road. And it gives you a little bit more play for your braking, which is handy because it can get pretty scary. If you don't decide to do that, you get pretty rough off road. But yeah, this was pretty annoying, this type of service, because it's just a lot of real powdered stuff, and I'm not that confident in that. But this just never seemed to end the whole way there. So, but anyway, the main crux of this was to run in the tyres and just give it a good run after the service. because this was my last opportunity to get a decent service before I got back to Buenos Aires. So I had a couple of thousand miles to go to get to Ushuaia, and I didn't really want to have any problems, which I ended up having, but I wasn't that keen on having those problems, you know. Another thing you can do with the off-road is, you know, and I didn't do it today, but normally I would if I had a fair bit of off-road. This is all sand, pain in the ass. But you just let your tyres down. You can let the tyres down to I mean, some people go even further, but I've let my tyres down to about 10 psi, and it handles a lot better. It's just this sand. And so off-roading is one of those things that you love doing, and you really want to get into it. This is pretty steep up and down here, and look at the sand, and you can't really tell from here. Just really thick, just powder, you know. But on your feet most of the time, on the balls of your feet or just below. That's better. Yeah, so I probably had another 30 or 40 miles of this until I'd finished and got onto the bitumen. It was a broken down car on the right. Yeah, so now was my, you know, in the next couple of days I head off south, and the first day's ride is a bit of a pain, and I think I did about 12 hours on the first day just to get into what is described as Patagonia. But once it was from there, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, you know, from that moment on. Just so great, you know. The roads were tough, a lot of off-roading, and I've spoken about it in some previous videos, that a lot of the roads down south are now they're starting to redo them all, and so there's probably only a couple of years left maybe of actually being able to off-road all the way down to into long parts of Ushuaia, because most of it's getting paved. You'll still have options, but just not the same. And it just means there'll be a lot more traffic if they are, right? Because some of the roads are pretty tough, you know, and you wouldn't be able to do them. And so once they're all paved, you'll get all the Harley riders and stuff like that doing it. You can go a fair way down there paved, but there's certain, depending which route you take. But some of the routes you've got no chance, you know, on a Harley or a street bike. You know, you can put them on the back of a truck for big parts. This is now just the final stage. Now this last stage is pretty much single track a lot of the way until I get back on the bitumen again and on the pavement. But it was, you know, I mean, it was good fun. See all this stuff here, and this was pretty tricky stuff too, because it was really rough as well. The bike was bouncing everywhere. But it's pretty exciting. Like on the left-hand side, you'll see some of the drops down below are pretty cool. I think I passed one. There was one car that came past me here on this little stretch here. As much of the powdered stuff here, but it still was pretty tricky, and there wasn't a lot of room for error. I have a big stretch, and then I get to Patagonia, and then you've got to. There's some of the places you can't ride, like you've got to get a ferry or a boat, and you've got a few options to get boats across big lakes and stuff like that. But I think I did it once more. I did one more boat trip, and then one more boat trip after this, or maybe no. Actually, there's a few more. There's about three or four little ferry rides. There's a couple of little ones, and one was a longer one. Yeah, you don't have much of an option with that. So all the cars go on that, and some of them take one group. So there's two. One of them's two trips. One on a big boat, and then one that just takes a short ferry ride to get back to the road. So once I did that, whenever you get a ferry, the best thing to do is to be the last person off and just sit around for about half an hour and let all the traffic get in front of you. Because otherwise you've got all that dust following you. You've got heroes in four-wheel drive that want to go 100 mile per hour past you. So my little trick was to just wait, get off the ferry and then just relax, maybe have a bite to eat. And some of the places have little cafes and that. Let everyone get a fair way in front of you. But this was a good fun trip, and I was pretty stoked when I saw the highway again, because I was pretty tired. A couple of hours of this was pretty tiring. But you can see from the drops, it's pretty cool. So once I got back, I spent a couple more nights there, cleaned up everything, got all my gear. From Santiago, I'd sent a couple of boxes back to Miami, to myself, in Miami, just by slow freight. Actually, I sent them back to a friend of mine. Just to lighten the load off, because I knew I was going to be doing a lot more off-roading, and I wouldn't want to be riding on this stuff. I mean, you can do it easy enough, but just having all that extra weight, you just want to get as light as you can. You work it out as you go, what stuff you need and what stuff you don't need. You start your trip with all these things that you'd love to have, and then by the end of your trip you've got rid of half of it because it's just weight. There's a little Echo Lodge down below on the left-hand side. Yeah, so this is the last little bit of stretch, and basically once I get to the foot of the mountain there, I find the road. There's some people up to the right-hand side too. I don't know whether they're camping or not, but it's a pretty desolate place, so there's not much to do there. But there was tons of Echo Lodges along the way, and stuff like that. I just don't understand why anyone would want to stay in those places, unless you're like a mad off-roader enthusiast. But I didn't see any ATVs or motorbikes. It was all horses and stuff like that, which I would have found pretty boring if it was me.